On day 11, we took a train from Bologna to Verona. Verona has a modern feeling to it compared to everywhere else we've been in Italy, until you get to the center. The arena was built 4 decades before the Colosseum, and it is still used today to host concerts and other events. We then strolled down the street to Juliet's house to see if either her or Romeo were home. They had a lot of visitors, so we left them a little note to tell them we were there, and then continued on our day. We continued on past the Scaliger tombs and into the center of the city. The city center is filled with markets surrounded by Gothic-style buildings mixed with 21st century stores. However, if you look up, you'll see frescoes lining the walls. Though Verona feels modern, it's very easy to see just how old the city is. Overall, Verona is an elegant city. It's not overly touristy, but offers enough to make it worth the trip. It's a perfect place for a relaxing day. We ended the day with a train ride back to Bologna. The next morning we awoke to a lizard attempting to break into the car. We told the lizard to scramio and drove to Florence, somehow. Verona was quiet, relaxing, and easy to maneuver. Florence is ancient, busy, confusing, and reminded me of all the times I died playing Assassin's Creed 2. It's easy to get lost in Florence, but if you follow the insanely large crowds, you'll easily find the landmarks. We found the Piazza della Signoria, which contained many famous statues and a few human statues. We then followed crowds to the Cathedral di Santa Maria del Fiore, or the Duomo as it's commonly called. Built over a span of 140 years from over 4 million bricks, this cathedral is the 3rd biggest in the world. The amount of detail on the inside and outside of this building is stunning. We proceeded down the street to an art gallery which contained Michelangelo's real statue of David, which I didn't know was 17 feet tall until I saw it in person. We continued around the gallery to see more statues and eventually found what I was most excited to see, the famous paintings from babies from the Renaissance era. That's right, I was most excited to see old man-looking babies, and they did not disappoint. We then walked to a hill a few kilometers away to overlook Majestic Florence. Overall, Florence is a very unique city and way more touristy than I ever imagined. It is the cradle of the Renaissance, and they hold it proudly. The following day we again took a train, this time from Bologna to Venice. I know I've said it about every city, but Venice is the definition of unique. I couldn't figure out what it was at first, but then I realized it. A lot of people were texting and driving. We ate a 4-course meal, which of course consisted of pizza. Then we found a guy who wasn't texting and driving, and he gave us a tour of Venice on his gondola. He took us through the streets and eventually onto the Grand Canal. We went under the Rialto Bridge, then down some streets, if that's what you want to call them, to Marco Polo's house and to one of the buildings built for Giacomo Casanova.
One of the buildings for Giacomo Casanova.
Now that we were canal smart, we went to the famous St. Mark's Square. The square is massive and makes you forget you're on a tiny island surrounded by water. One thing you can't miss, however, is the amount of pigeons hanging out in the square. It's said over 40,000 pigeons live in Venice, and they're even listed as a tourist attraction in St. Mark's Square. But there's more to St. Mark's Square than pigeons. There's the gorgeous St. Mark's Basilica, built in 1092. Then there's the famous Doge's Palace, which is now a museum. We walked around the paths of Venice before getting the train back to Bologna for the final time. The next day we said goodbye to our pirate-safe Airbnb in Bologna and drove to Venice. Now that we've seen all the touristy stuff, we were able to explore Venice like a local would. We got lost and walked around the alleys unexplored by tourists. However, all the paths ended up leading to touristy spots. We soon ended up back at St. Mark's Square, where we checked out the Bridge of Sighs, which connects the prison to the Doge's Palace interrogation rooms. We wandered around the prison and soon ended up inside in an exhibit. The exhibit showed off Chinese performance artist Te Xingxi's work. In 1980 and 81, he took a photo of himself every hour on the hour for a full year. A few months later, he began an outdoor piece where he spent the entire year outside, never entering a shelter of any sort in New York City. Once we left the prison, we were back on crowded paths. We found an expensive candy store which wasn't good for the wallet. It was, however, starting to get late, so we wandered back to the car and drove into the sunset. The mountain silhouette was our next destination, and we drove to a city called Vittorio Veneto, where I ate the best pizza ever at Al 128. The next morning we woke up in our castle and we were greeted with a breakfast for a king. We wasted no time eating it, as today was going to be a long travel day. Once I was full and Megan got the local dogs petted, we were able to take in some views from this 12th century castle before we left. Surrounded by mountains and houses from people who don't live in castles, there is no better way to end a trip in Italy than in a 12th century castle. That day we drove for 6 hours to a city close to the Rome airport. Along the way we ate more pizza and learned Italians think the Baltimore Orioles play basketball. We stayed in a house with the strangest staircase for the night before we headed back to the airport the next morning. Looking back, Italy is one amazing country. No matter what you're into, whether it be nature, food, cars, history, animals, architecture, water, hot weather, driving fast, or fashion, there's something for you here. Sure, they have their problems like graffiti, pickpocketers, which we witnessed on the metro in Rome. Their FIFA team doesn't know how to score goals anymore, and their country has a ton of debt, but every country has their own flaws. Italy thrives on the tourism industry. Where Canada and America are currently trying to erase history by tearing down monuments and changing the names of buildings, Italians do not hide their long history. They learn from their past and preserve what made them. Naturally, Italy is gorgeous. Every drive gave us something amazing to look at. But the culture is something else that needs to be experienced. Oh, and the pizza. Italy really is a country I think everyone needs to visit in their lifetime. There's amazing places everywhere just waiting to become an amazing memory. I want to say thank you to you for watching these videos, and I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you to everyone we interacted with in Italy, especially our Airbnb hosts. And most importantly, thank you to my now fiancée Megan for saying yes, which would have made this trip very awkward if you didn't, and for going on this incredible journey with me. I cannot wait for our next journey. Again, thank you for watching. Ciao.